didn't know about any public meeting.
You're live. Okay, so I can call the meeting over?
Yeah.
It's 5 o'clock. I'll call this meeting of the planning commission order. This is, if we can start.
Fine stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna present it. If we can start with roll call, maybe go slow in case Ken shows up.
The recorder on, please.
Yes.
There see.
There you go.
Speak of the Ken.
Yes.
Still go. Austin Boudreaux. Karen DeForest.
Here.
Steve Garman. Here. Rick Scheit.
Present.
Jeff Burlingame.
Here.
Ken Shelton.
Here.
Jim Slayball.
Here.
Landon Brown.
Here.
Jeff Rhodes.
Here.
And Jeff Peters. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to skip you. After you did with the shades and everything, I get.
So just, we got to turn microphones on. Just so everybody knows, we've gone live. We're actually streaming live this meeting. Which was our commitment to the county and to the commissioners that we would use this room, but we'd have to make everything live. So everybody on their best behavior, right? Okay, so we did roll call. There are no minutes for this for approval of this at this point.
No, sir.
Okay, so we'll move forward. Reports of officers, the chairman's report. I guess I have nothing further to report since our meeting last month that can't be discussed during different agenda items. So I'll skip my report. Any questions for me about that? I have to give you an opportunity to discuss it in case you're mad at me for doing that. Committee reports, city county liaisons.
I think your report, we meet in 2 weeks.
Okay. Austin, how you doing?
Good, only what I had submitted, so nothing out of the ordinary, just 2 variances last month in the city.
No, which was very helpful. We appreciate that. That was good. Drainage board. And then the report.
At this time, no, I don't believe so. Things are going smoothly and,
Okay. I'll take the plat committee, I guess. We met a couple weeks ago and signed off on, and those have gone full circle, and we've now completed the signatures on those plat maps as of today, right?
Correct. Yep.
So everything is closed out from a plat committee standpoint. Okay, thank you. Board of Zoning Appeal.
You have 2 front setbacks on 2 separate properties. And that's all that we have on the docket for next Monday.
It's nice to see members of the BZA here tonight. Thank you for coming. It's great. Great participation. Any questions for Board of Zoning Appeals? Anything? Okay. We'll move into unfinished business. The first item there is extraterritorial jurisdiction. And Clint, why don't you give an update and I can supplement what you tell us about where we are with that at this point.
Nothing new from the last meeting, other than we're working forward to have another meeting. Again, I think we're on the same page with Angola as much as we've ever been. It looks like they are looking to regulate the ETJ, possibly give us back portions that they don't plan on developing anytime soon. They didn't say this, but I know developers, I know there's some areas that are they're going to be taken in, most likely to the west. Again, that's unofficial, but the writing's on the wall. And so we're going to have a follow-up meeting, go with the interlocal agreement. Brandon is working on said interlocal agreement right now. We gave him a copy of something I drafted before.
Brandon is with?
He's with City of Fort Wayne right now, but he's with High Performance Government Network.
Right. Just so everybody knows.
He's one of our consultants with Ryan Chasey. So he's working on that and he'll get that back to us. And then we're still trying to get that next meeting with Angola to find out. I mean, I'm confident that it's going very well this time.
So more of it just closing out with Angola again instead of another meeting.
Yes.
Okay. And I understand they're busy. I heard off the cuff something last night from somebody that ETJ has got 67 contractors that are interested in certain areas. I don't know if that's the number, but that seems like a lot.
That's a lot. It does seem like a lot.
Okay. Any questions for Clint on the ETJ stuff?
Now's the time. It's going well. I'll be happy to answer. When it's ugly, I don't want to talk about it.
Been here for hours. Okay. Next on the agenda is, so as we talked about, that we're going through So, some key ordinance rewrites and updates. Happy that we've got a nice one pager to kind of cut our teeth on. So the pond permit ordinance that everybody's got a copy of. I guess the way that we should do this, and Don, tell me if I'm wrong, but somebody should make a motion to approve, second, and then we will go into discussion. And one thing I'm going to ask, just because one of the reasons that the minutes are difficult is that we have a lot of side conversations that took place last week. So I'm going to use the gavel a little bit more just to kind of keep it on order so that the note taking is a little bit better for us. Okay. Side conversations are great, but it's better if everybody can hear it. And I think I only have one good ear, so we'll go from there. Okay. So with that said, I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval of the pond permit ordinance to the commissioners.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made by Karen, second by Austin to forward the recommendation to the commissioners. Discussion. Anybody have any questions, comments? It's pretty straightforward, but I know it's been a long time coming. There has not been a lot of machinations in the copy that we're seeing here today, but ask questions. I mean, I think it makes sense. And we'll, like I said, we're cutting our teeth on this one because when we get to the stormwater ordinance, that's going to be a page turner, lots of pages to turn. So any questions about what we've got here?
Mr. Chairman, can I do a quick explanation? of what we're doing here?
Absolutely.
I don't know, for those of you who are here, the audience will not remember this because you weren't here, but for the board, we talked about when we did this ordinance update, and we started at the beginning of this year, and it's going to go through next year. And we talked about there being several different ways we can do it. One is just wait and sit on all this stuff for the 2 years and then bring it all in fresh. Or we can update our current ordinance and then fold that in, or it's up to you, possibly even tweak it or change it. If we got a year and a half and this isn't working for us, then we can change it again at the end. So in this instance, this is one of those where if this goes through with the recommendation and the commissioners approve it, this will go in our existing current ordinance. We're not going to wait that other year and a half for it to go in when everything else is done. In a perfect world, this exact language will go into that new ordinance when we're done, but there's no guarantee of that. But it will be in this ordinance for now, at least. That help that we know what we're doing.
Any questions for Clint? And I'll just give, the example, as I've gone through this is that, and we discussed it, having, definitions as to what some of these words are, like the first one I see, it's at the bottom, an emergency overflow spillway. But what exactly is that, so that we know, again, so if there's questions, from a contractor that we know what to tell them, right? There's a few other ones that are just definitional that I don't know if I would be able to answer the question unless I came to, Clinton's staff, right?
So an over spillway, Clint, we're not gonna make them do like a concrete weir or anything like that. They can be just made out of just a cut out
Natural.
up top of bank, correct?
That would be up to you or the drainage board, depending who's
Or
required.
stoned. Yeah,
Or
okay.
anything that you would
No,
require,
and
yes.
I really like this too, because it talks about having, I'm gonna put it in layman's terms, where here it says include trash racks and anti-vortex device. What all that is, just an animal trap. You can get in the end of it. It was out east of town on Metz Road. We had a turtle crawl up the pipe and it caused several $1,000s of damage. So this is good, and it just keeps it away, and we don't mess up our flow.
Yeah, otherwise it is. It's very straightforward and,
Question I guess I have, is there any reason, and maybe Jim will go over here, to have something in there in regards to erosion control during construction? Or does that fall into a separate?
It's in the stormwater ordinance that we thought we had, but we didn't. So.
Is it
you'll be
more
seeing
than an
that.
acre?
I don't know.
I mean, it's no offense. Generally, the
That's
ponds,
the rule 5, isn't it?
generally the ponds, I know there's one that came about, actually, Andy Scheib is doing one that is out in the middle of nowhere. A lot of times the ponds that are being dug have plenty of acres. There's a lot of grass strips, so silt fence generally really isn't going to be a major concern. I think if it's in town, which it wouldn't really be, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Those people are going to have pools, or your Lakers got their lakes, so.
But it has been addressed in that other ordinance, and you will be seeing that very soon.
So in the other ordinance, and not to jump ahead, is it based on square footage or is it below a rule 5, right? So rule 5 is not gonna
It's
take it.
below, I think, because it's on the model ordinance.
But there's something about a quarter acre.
Well, when we went to that last St. Joe River Basin Commission meeting, when it got to this stage is when they increased it. So I think we can even make it lower while we're in the model ordinance and adopting the ordinance for us, or higher, depending. So there is language in there. I just don't remember what it was, but I think it is lower than the item.
Do you want that stipulative in your approval?
No, I mean, I just wanted to bring it up just in case we need to do something.
Which is a good point. I mean,
Yeah.
It has been, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That has been the one sticking point for these ordinances going through. These are model ordinance, and then when you get to that point, it's been falling apart. At least Noble and LaGrange County, that's what they're saying when we went to that last meeting, 2 meetings ago, I'm sorry.
So during construction, you mean that there's not?
No, during the adoption phase, the recommendation phase, it went to the point where, you start compromising and whatnot, and it went above, I believe, the IDEM rule, which it can be above that too in the IDEM rule, because the IDEM may not even require it. It might be exempt from IDEM, like residential and whatnot. So we are going to exceed IDEM's regulation in that regard. But then if you up that acreage requirement, maybe we don't. Right. So, and that'll be up to you and ultimately the commissioners to adopt what you give them. Which last month I said I'm willing to take the lead, but I want Jim standing beside me because this is a very surveyor heavy. Yeah.
Okay, so
When you get technical, yeah.
So I guess I can follow up, Brendan. So if I mean, again, given your experience, is that something that should be explicit in here then? I guess it makes sense to me,
Well, I mean, it's never a problem until it is, right?
Right.
And if it's not there, if there's not something for it or it's not accounted for in some place, I mean, that's where we run into an issue, right?
Yeah.
It's not there. So if a contractor comes in and strictly follows this and the off chance that it's not in the middle of a 40-acre field or in a place that someone has a significant amount of vegetation between the actual pond and the neighbor, is where we run into an issue, right? And so I don't necessarily want to complicate it and make it more convoluted than it needs to be. However, as long as, or maybe we reference, erosion control as once that ordinance is adopted for the stormwater, maybe there can be a reference to something. And like I said, I'm just throwing it out there for conversation. I don't know that it needs to be a stipulation. But I think it's just something we address should it become an issue.
And that's what I was going to suggest, if we put some type of reference in there, see this particular ordinance for.
Do we do that cross-referencing?
Incorporated by reference. The good news here is it's going to go in front of the same board. It's going to go in front of the drainage board. So it kind of already is with the language, wouldn't hurt.
No, and I think that's a great idea because I mean, so if it's footnoted, then you can go back and that you're covered in both areas. Okay, yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Usually we start that kind of like a preamble in accordance with Indiana code and this blah, blah, blah. And we put that in there as well.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. Okay, any other points?
So you will make that change before you submit it to the commissioners? Okay.
Is that okay, Don, with them voting on it tonight, or do we have to see it?
So they vote on the amendment as well as the.
Yeah, so Landon, you can make an amendment and then, make it stipulative and then second, and we'll vote on that and then we'll go back to the final recommendation.
I'm fine with that. Clint, how do you want it worded so that since we're referencing a ordinance that has not yet been developed?
I didn't think of that.
Well, I mean, we know we know that there's going to be an ordinance where it refers to will have to be determined once it's finalized.
Right.
And then you close it out, if you write this with the parentheses as footnoted, and then you fill in the blank once it's approved, I think that's appropriate. Okay, so Landon makes the motion for the amendment. There's a second for that amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay,
Yeah.
second on the amendment. Any questions on the amendment to include the, the stipulative language to refer back to the pending stormwater ordinance draft? It's recorded, so we're happy.
Can you say that again?
Let's replay that. Any discussion on that amendment? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Amendment passes. Okay, so then to the pond permit ordinance draft that we've got, any other discussion there?
On
Yes.
the private drains, it said it shall not be located where private drains tiles will be cut or modified. So with that, does that meaning these private drains may not necessarily be on the property owner's property where the pond's going in? Is that how that refers to that?
Tell me where you're referring, Rick.
General location. Number 3.
Okay. Do we refer that back to you, or is that a surveyor question?
Yeah, it came from the surveyor's office. I mean, I've seen that language before other places, but I don't know.
The only, see, and
I've read this
Well, we
20
can't-
times, that's why.
if there's a private drain and it's not county regulated, I think that needs to stay in there because if it's not county regulated, I can't touch it. You know what I mean? It's all private drains, but we have to somehow protect an adjoining landowner if they have a private drain that a pond wouldn't go through and now all of a sudden, now they're flooded, you know? I mean, we see it all the time that we have these little minor subdivisions that 2 acres are cut off, put the house in the barn, and you know what I'm saying? And the farmer still keeps on farming land. You don't want the house, you know, so
I think the
landowners.
hard part with this, it says will be cut, meaning in the future it could be cut. I mean, I think that you can't foresee what will happen in the future, right? I think if there's a pond shall not be located where private drain tiles are cut. I mean, I think it needs to be present tense as opposed to future tense. If that makes sense.
I guess I look at will as present tense.
What says will have to be cut? I mean, I don't know. I guess and maybe I'm reading it wrong. And I apologize if that's the case. I just, I don't want it to make it sound like you can't. Future tense, as in somebody comes in and cuts a tile after you put your pond in, and then all of a sudden they're gonna come back and use some weird.
Right.
I mean, so, I mean, is that a word change from will to should? Drainage tile should have to be cut?
I don't know.
I miss my English teacher at this point.
I mean, here's the thing, you have a lot of language, and then at the very end, the last sentence says, if the county drainage board is not satisfied by a drainage design, it may deny a pond.
And they have to come to us every time now.
So what I'm saying is maybe take out the technical aspects and just get a positive statement that the drainage board has to approve the drain whenever a tile's cut.
Well, they have to approve the pond first.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes, you're right, it's part of, not the drain, yeah.
Well, there's probably several instances where they go in to put a pond in, may not know the private drain. Until after they start.
Sure, should they have gotten approval before they started? They know the drains are there.
Who's gonna know?
No,
You wouldn't know.
oh, just the
I've
private
seen this
ones.
happen a lot where they dig and until they dig up tile, they don't know it's there.
No, and in order to dig a pond too, you do what you do, you dig in a key all the way around it, because if you have a tile, I think Root Beer's pond alone had a tile and the pond wouldn't hold water, and here there was an old farm tile, but it was on her land too, but we had to go in through there and find the tile, cut it because it was draining the pond.
I've seen it, yeah, I've seen this happen a lot, yeah, where they discover the tile.
How many occurrences? Like 100? What? In the last 100 years?
I don't know. I mean, back in the day, it made it so easy that, you know, we just call up a surveyor and say, hey, we want to put a pond in here, and Larry would, yep, go ahead, you know, but, you know, I think if more people are doing this, a lot of people like to put up a new home, or they want to borrow the dirt from their pond to bring up the elevation of their home, or whatever it may be, you know.
I would say it's not unusual
There you go. That's a good way to
It's
put it.
not unusual.
Correct.
It's not like it happens once.
Okay.
It's pretty common when you dig a pond that you, Mr. Scheit probably could tell us better than anybody else, but it's not unusual to hit a field tile that may or may not affect your neighbor. It's not unusual.
And quite honestly, historically, we have not issued a lot of pond permits.
But there wasn't it.
Right, they do seem to be on the uptick, so it'll probably be a learning experience.
But I would say as we are platting more subdivisions, then they have to have a pond. So, I mean.
But you're referring to a pond as a drainage
Yeah,
reception area, not necessarily a recreational. or-
right, yeah, the set aside.
Pleasure
pond,
pond.
Yeah,
Yes.
But I guess I wouldn't be too worried about a subdivision because they're gonna go through the ETJ. They're gonna have to have their own drainage system, their own retention pond already designed,
a drainage plan.
a drainage plan designed, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, the big ones will catch it on the onesies and twosies. That's when it's gonna be tough. The stuff that Plat Committee sees, it's gonna be, you're gonna approve it and not know what's there and then find out later. And that's a tough one. I don't know how you'd word that.
Is it something that you could word it to the effect of, any damage caused by the installation of said pond is the responsibility of the property owner?
That's kind of what I was thinking. You water back on the neighbor.
Yeah,
That'd be,
So that would be up to code enforcement then, just to see that, that it happened,
again, we would have to know first.
but they're gonna find out.
well, it would have to come as a complaint, right? And typically you would have a neighbor who would complain of the tile that's been, damaged or, flooding issue because of said damage.
And I know of one that was put in and I think it might have been a regulated drain, I'm not for certain, but they plugged it up and filled their pond up, but it also held up water on 80 acres prior to it. And brought it up to the point where they couldn't even cut it. So,
And that scenario right there is more or less why you're looking at a pond ordinance. We're trying to avoid stuff like that.
it took a complaint and they, had to take the water back down, redo their pond a different way.
So Rick, do you have a recommendation that might follow Landon's idea? That we can make an edit here, or do we table this and research it?
So the drainage board can only deal with county regulated tiles and drains, but could there be wording in there in the permit issued itself? If down the future, this causes flooding to a neighbor and it's determined that be true, the person who
Yeah,
dug the pond would have to pay for the repair.
at the cost of the property owner.
At the cost of the owner where the pond is.
This language is available in other ordinances. I've seen it.
Okay.
It's not unusual to give the drainage board authority or someone authority to deal with having what I call field tile.
Most of them would be field tile. Yep.
And affecting the neighbor's drainage.
Okay, so we're
I
cutting.
kind of want to table this. I could.
Well, no, okay, so then you can make that motion, because otherwise I was gonna call for a vote. So if you want to table it, then make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to table it at this time.
I'll second that.
Okay,
And I just have one other comment, and
discussion, yeah, go ahead.
discussion, and I want to Jim's point, I think it's probably good that we figure out a better way to do this because, I think a lot of these issues that we make, they may not be the person digging the pond. They may have, sometimes it takes time to develop the issue, the flooding upstream caused by the tile that's been damaged. So I think we need to make sure say you buy a house and you dig a pond and then you move, and now the new person bought the pond, bought your house and takes responsibility for the tile that you broke when you dug the pond, and then all of a sudden
you're flood,
and now
also,
Don's dealing with it. And
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I want to see what the wording that DeKalb has. I don't know about LaGrange I just want to see what the other surrounding counties, how they're taking care of that.
Okay, so it's been moved, seconded, in discussion. Any other discussion on tabling the ordinance until we get a little bit more feedback?
Got the motion to pass the amendment. I got motion. I thought on the pond orders. Who motioned to table it? Right? Jim, okay, so you're waiting for a second?
Yeah, no, we got a second.
Okay, so we got a second, okay.
To table, it, right. Just to answer the two pertinent questions that have been raised at this point. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of tabling the pond ordinance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, so the pond ordinance is tabled, and then we'll have another report on this and back to the agenda next month. Okay, great. So let me just, I'll, again, next month, if we've got the stormwater ordinance, how many pages do we think, Charlie? 60 or
I
100?
think it was, honestly, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't want to guesstimate, but it was definitely more than 50.
Okay, so imagine what we just did on one page, having to do that for 60 pages. So when it comes out to us, we're pressing, Brendan to get it to us as quickly as possible so that we can go through it and we can find those stipulations so we can discuss it at our next meeting.
This might be for the best, because then you can maybe tie that stuff together.
Absolutely. No, I mean, they will all tie it together. I firmly believe that, but it's just how we do that. So, okay. So just a heads up for us then for next month, or at least the next 2 months, okay? Okay, so there was okay, so we're gonna move past the stormwater ordinance draft. I guess we discussed that and we're waiting for that. So that's really not something we're gonna act on today, right? We should have added, so last meeting, there was a discussion around a complaint that Rick Scheit brought to us around cattle feeding operations.
Yes.
Not confined, but just cattle, right? I distinguish between the two. So we tabled that. So I guess there's a couple ways to go about this. You can make a motion to take it off the table, second it, and we'll vote on that. And then as part of that discussion, we can figure out what you kind of want to do with that at this point. You can ask me if you have a different direction.
Well, I thought we voted to bring it to this meeting.
Yeah, so it's on the table for this meeting. So it should have been added to our unfinished business, this tabled cattle feeding
Unless you
operation.
want a motion to discuss this further at this meeting.
Yeah, no, so wait, so you'd make a motion, take it off the table, second it, and then as part of that discussion, then we come up with what your plan is. If you're prepared.
Well, I haven't got, supplied any of the information from last meeting of the state ordinance that contradict what I was talking about. But
So you had a page that talked about we could use state law when making our determinations. I texted it to you last Monday, the 23rd.
Well, let's do that. So make a motion, take it off the table, have it seconded, and then as that discussion, yeah, because there's a couple of points we should make.
I'll make a motion to take it off the table.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay,
Who was that, Landon?
Landon. Okay, so a move to take our issue from last month off the table for cattle feeding operations. Seconded by Landon. So I can recap a little bit, and we, as part of the discussion. So Rick was reached by a constituent that had a complaint about a farm operation. And I'm not going to get into all the details as far as where that was and everything. And the discussion, and you can correct me, Rick, that it was some questions about the definitions that we may not have had as clear so that Rick could respond to his constituent about it. So as part of this discussion, we wanted to, find out kind of what our options were for either defining the definition or adding to the definition. So that's where we are. So you're saying, Rick, that you don't have anything to kind of give direction on that definition?
The definition that I have in the book of confined feeding carries a different,
And to be clear, though, we're not talking about confined, we're talking about just a cattle feeding operation, a regular farm operation, not a CAFO.
see, that's where I think there's a problem with the verbiage. Because confined feeding doesn't necessarily mean it is a CAFO. Okay, it is confined feeding in as far as our definition is. And it's basically confined feeding of animals for food, fur, pleasure, purpose in lots, pens, ponds, sheds, buildings, or where all food is supplied to the animals by means other than grazing. So in that definition there, if they're not allowed to graze, then it's confined feeding. And if you look back in our, which I pointed out in our chapter 9, it has a definition for confined feeding. And its minimum lot size shall be 40 acres. All front side yard setbacks shall be a minimum of 300 feet. Well, that's pretty tough to get on 3 acres, which this particular one was located on. So I'm trying to understand where the disconnect is between our book and what we're trying to enforce and where these people are at right now.
Okay, good. Nice summary. Any questions go beyond that? Otherwise,
Well, I have 28 acres and raised 5 hogs this year inside the barn. Is that a confined feeding? I'm just trying to say, like, I understand I'm not gonna put in 100 hogs because I'm just doing it for my own personal food, but I don't know how far we go.
Well,
My chickens, I
when
keep
you're
them in too.
talking swine,
Mhm.
you only need 3 acres and a half acre for each
Okay.
additional, according to our book. Because you're talking about a hobby farm.
Okay. Okay.
and that covers cattle as well, but just up to
And
a
I,
certain number.
yeah.
Okay,
Not the amount of cattle that he's discussing.
right. Okay,
So when
so,
you start putting, 100, 150 on 3 acres, there's no room for those to graze for their food. So food is 100% of food is being brought to them.
okay,
So
so,
at that point, we have no manure storage plan in place.
they don't, or,
I don't know.
Well, it's not a CAFO, so basically we're saying it's unregulated.
so they don't have to be regulated.
Right, they're not regulated unless it's a CAFO.
Okay, so you're considering a gap in that definition, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then last month,
Exploited.
though, we discussed IDEM's rule, right? And IDEM takes over at that point, right? So we can't make I don't want to say that.
Sure we can.
So Clint, with your experience, can we make a recommendation stronger than IDEM?
Yes. You just can't make it weaker.
Can make it weaker. Okay. So I mean, I can say, like, bring us your proposed ordinance and then let's discuss it at that point. I don't know I wouldn't know how to write it in a meeting like this, is what I'm saying. Because I know we got some great resources, but
love the
Get your
conversation.
name and address and
Yeah.
make it official.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm Jake Cox from up in Fremont, live just south of Little Long Lake on,
Thanks, Jason.
live up south of Little Long Lake on 925. But the conversation, I think the group that we've been working with, it's done a ton of research on this. So we're excited to present and share. I'm actually elected with the Clear Lake Township Council. Was pressed by several neighbors after getting engaged with some of the early requests for CAFOs. But I think that a lot of the research by some of our, team members, we've literally talked to hundreds of people. And, I think the commonality is we're all stakeholders. There's a lot at stake. Most of the people that live here and vacation here, the property, the quality of the lakes, the quality of the aquifer and the water we drink is top priority. So I think that with the questions you're talking about, I think we could help quite a bit with the research. I don't know that we have all the answers, but we've had literally hundreds of people giving input, doing research and sharing, and hopefully, it's helpful. And really, this is, we're relying on the planning commission. This is not a simple thing. It's, just on the definition. So we have worked on some of the definitions, what IDEM does and doesn't do. And a lot of the background that, and I think a number of our people are happy to stay engaged and help with any of that research because this is not easy to navigate. For me personally, I'll just share, I grew up with a grandfather that raised every kind of animal you can imagine. And my other grandfather was a butcher for 45 years. Trust me, I'm not anti-farming. I'm not anti-meat. There are extreme people we encounter, but I'm all in for Steuben County. Moved my family here a few years ago, moved my business here. So I think our presentation that we've worked on could be very helpful. And it's really, we're doing this because we're relying on the Planning Commission to navigate this. We think it is urgent for the future quality of this county and long term.
No, absolutely. And I'm just going to stop you, Jake. Yeah, because this is more discussion on the motion to take it off the table. Because the next thing will be to okay, how do we do this? Because I think there's great engagement. I've seen the presentations that people have made and people have approached me and I'm sure the members of the board as to how are you going to do this? I'm like, I'd like to see that. So let's discuss and take it off the table and then we can make a motion as to what to do next. Does that make sense for everybody?
I think that's great. We've done a lot of even looking at what other counties have done across the state. We benchmark that. There's a ton of information out there that I think can help. So
yeah, no, and
we're excited to be here today and share what we've been working on for a long time.
Okay, yeah. So let's move on to that because I know there's some other people that I would like to rely on in the audience. So any more discussion on the motion to take it off the table? Okay, those in favor of taking it off the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so now we're open to discussion on the overall process. So our problem statement that Rick outlined is basically we've got a gap in the definition. We understand there's a couple of ways to approach this, right? I'll just speak freely here for a moment, and I can pass the gavel if you guys want me to. But some of the things I've heard in response to this is you're never going to solve this unless you tell folks they can't build residential in an ag area, because you cross too many things and people get upset. I don't know, that's the answer. Or if again, all of the resources we've got here, to work with Rick to come up with what that ordinance should look like. Tell me, Ken, what? So that's my recommendation, sitting as chair here today. But Rick, I kind of want to, you're the one that took the heat for it. I think the staff did a great job by going out and checking out the operation. They got a good feel for it. They, talked to other board members about what they found. So I think everybody here is open to, okay, what's the next step? How do we write a definition that fills that gap, that doesn't get us in trouble with IDEM?
I don't think there's any getting trouble with IDEM because we're not encroaching on IDEM's regulations, and anything we do is better than what IDEM does is not an issue. But we're taking those that IDEM defines in cattle 300 or more, and there's different ones for different species. So it's that 300 and less that I'm concerned with. There's several of them going in. There's no manure storage plan. Manure is being piled just wherever on the property. So it's not contained. Every time it rains, it goes wherever it goes. They're on limited acreage, 3 to 5 acres that they're keeping these, 299 up to 299 animals. And I think there needs to at least be a manure storage plan. What are we doing with the manure? Where are they putting it? How are they keeping it? How are they keeping it from running in to our lakes and streams when it rains. And all this is, right now, from what I can see, we're not addressing it, and I think we should be.
Okay, no,
It is, I mean, in our comprehensive plan, it tells us that we should be taking care of this.
absolutely. No, I don't think there's any disagreement that, it's just how to do it, and how do you get the feedback to do it? Okay, so, so did you visit, was that your estimation on the fact that, when you looked at it, or is that just feedback? I mean, not just feedback, I mean, feedback you get from residents, but.
I'm all around the county and I've seen these operations personally and I've had a lot of feedback. And even from the people living in the area, they're not against farming. That's not the issue, but they're against unregulated or unmanaged, I should say. It's
Okay, so then can we go back to, so the question would have been, gone back to, Clinton, when you gave the permit for this. So there's no, okay, but that's the decision, right? That's the decision. There's no permit. So the resident can appeal that decision, right? Okay, so and we've outlined that process, right? Okay, so if there's a permitting capability given to a resident, and surrounding residents or affected residents, they can do an appeal to the BZA.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know if Brenda Markle's, if she's here, and I spoke to her, and I guess that's, me understanding the process, was just that I believe it is. It's like, we can appeal that decision. And then, and then that forces the BZA to put more definition.
Has it been appealed yet? Okay. I just was gonna say Landon and I have to go out if that's
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
case.
No, there's
Have
nothing
it
on
back
the
there.
docket.
Well, and they've missed the time frame for that, right?
they'd have to file another complaint.
Okay, and then 10 days. Okay, so again, so good process there though, right? And we're all
There's a
comfortable.
process in place for that already, yeah.
Okay.
My question though is if I can ask this, I mean, we're going in front of the plan commission for this, and I know the section Rick's talking about in our comp plan, it just talks about conservation buffers around water bodies. Intense agricultural should be required to install preserve buffers where there is water bodies. In this case, there isn't a water body, and I'm fine with that. I moved on past this appeal and whatever. Going forward, my question is there already agencies that handle this stuff? You're talking manure plans, you're talking buffer strips, you're talking stuff that we don't deal with. We can set a number of 300 feet or 200 feet or 100 feet, whatever this board wants. We can get with the drainage board and say, well, it's 75 foot to the top of the bank. But the plan commission, I don't think was ever designed to be the cow police and go out there and check these kind of things. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done.
Right.
And I'm not saying we can't be part of it. What I'm saying was to kind of expand the scope of what this office does. We had a big discussion when we started this this ordinance update in January when the consultants were here. One of the points we're going to try to do is not call it scope creep, which next thing you know, the plan commission solves the world's problems. We're not that. We just aren't. We're really good at what we do. And I'll put us up against any other planning department, county planning department, city planning departments are whole different animals. I'll put us up against any other county planning department and where it can be. But if we get in the weeds on this, there's other agencies out there that maybe would be better suited to handle all of this. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean.
You got any thoughts on which agency?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Are there, maybe that's part of the research we're gonna do?
NRCS,
I don't know. No, I don't.
Okay, so yeah, so we'll recognize Jason. Go ahead.
So manure is actually fertilizer and is actually handled by the state chemist's office. So unfortunately, manure is a fertilizer and is considered fertilizer. So the state chemist's office has all control of fertilizers and pesticides and all of that.
That satisfied. I mean, I guess, okay, so maybe let's stop here for a second. Well, just for sake of discussion, Jake, so do you guys understand what Clint's asking? I mean, are you guys prepared? Do you guys look at setbacks or, have you guys researched all of the
We've got
organizations?
several, we've looked at all of the county, what other counties have done and can talk to you about the top 3, 4, 5 things that they're doing. As far as an answer to who's going to do it, that's a big question. But, we want to lay out, like, if somebody doesn't do something, especially to Rick's point, and we'll show you some maps. In some of these areas, we're talking about, there are enough in one area, in one map, that one of our members is going to be here, close to her home. She did a map of every one of these animal feeding operations. They aren't a CFO or a CAFO. There are 61 that were put in about a 16 square mile area. If we assume that all of those have 299 head, we're talking about 18,000 head of beef cattle in that area. Now, what the state knows, and we'll show you the map that she also submitted, there's only 6 that are in that 399 to 1,000 CFOs that the state recognizes that were permitted in the whole county. But we've got one person or a combination of them, a conglomeration that's got 61 in that area with literally no manure plan, no oversight. And we want to make sure everybody on this planning commission understands what IDEM does and doesn't do. We've engaged them multiple times, and we can bullet point that out for you. But this is an urgent matter. I don't know that we have all the solutions, but when I talk to somebody who's in my township that forgot more about cattle farming, he's like 5 generations cattle farmer, okay? Open area, multi-centennial farm. He actually worked in an engineering capacity before he retired and came back to run the family farms. And when he tells me, Jake, if something isn't done, it's a matter of time until this is in our groundwater, and you're going to be talking about putting in, public water systems because nobody's going to be able to drink from their wells. And that's coming from somebody that has seen this happen in other parts of the country. So that to me, creates a lot of urgency as far as, those top 2 things, like you were talking about, laid out by the comprehensive plan. So our presentation will highlight that. And it's mostly facts and really just to help us all get on the same page with the definitions and hopefully help you guys with, how do we chart it going forward?
No, so that's perfect. That segues right into, so we're an advisory board to our county commissioners. So anything we come up with is in draft format, approved in that format, sent to the commissioners. So that's where the case has to be made. But I would, and I'd entertain this right now, is that, and I've got the power to set a subcommittee, right?
Sure. So
I'd suggest we set a subcommittee that would work with Rick Scheib and, members of, again, your group, again, you guys.
Concerned citizens.
Yeah, who wants to be involved,
That's not a good name.
No?
That guy right there in the hat, I'll tell you.
Call for everyone.
But, then we're fulfilling that charter to make, let's gather it, we discuss it, we approve it based on the data. I just don't think it makes sense for us to go through your presentation because, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And again, to kind of save, ourselves a little bit, we can narrow that down by doing initiating a subcommittee, come up with the language, bring it back to this body. We approve it, send it to the commissioners. The commissioners say yay and nay, and they take the repercussions based on, being elected officials. I'm not an elected official, thank goodness, because.
But the question I have is to Clint's point that we made, are we going down a road that we have no enforceability, 1, and 2, that is outside of our jurisdiction? Like, are we doing, or it sounds to me like we're trying to propose, and not that I'm against anything that you're saying, Rick, I agree, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. I've sat in numerous meetings and listened to off the wall complaints, however, about some of these situations as well. Are we going down a road to write a new ordinance specifically for feeding operations? Is that the plan? And if that's the case, are we then cherry picking things that we think, where do we stop?
My concern, and this is exactly what I was going to say, we can deal with setbacks. We can deal with even numbers. I guess we get somebody out there to count. When you're talking manure plants and all this other stuff, and from what I understand, again, I'm not a farmer, and I had a conversation about this yesterday. What I understand, they rotate these things a lot, right? These different barns are here, they're there. That's a constant thing. That's something we have to follow. Then when you get into the manure management plan, if it rains and there's a pile of poop and we see a washing away, yeah, okay, that's what we're qualified to do. But as far as like really getting into the nuts and bolts, we're just not set up to handle that kind of stuff, is all I'm saying. But if you put something out there and you want to get an ordinance format of what the health, general welfare and morals should be of the county, we can work on that lightning quick. We can get what you want. We can get it in here so it's enforceable. But when you go too far, especially if there's 61 and 16 square miles, I need a separate third office department just to handle cow poop.
How many square miles is the county? If you multiply that.
The cow plant, I never did, yeah.
But okay, but I understand what you're saying. Okay, Jim, did you have something you wanted to say?
I do, and I want to try to pour a little cold water on it and maybe play the devil's advocate here a little bit, if I may. So first of all, as a surveyor, I get a lot of complaints, as far as the farmers spreading too much fertilizer closer to the ditch. And again, please, I'm not picking on any Laker. I'm just trying to play. I'm an old farm kid myself. So I think it's somewhat hypocritical for us to say these doggone farms, these KFO units, whatever you call it. And then we have, I'm not saying everyone does it, but I've witnessed it too, where we go down the lake and we see, my goodness, True Green is there putting on more freaking fertilizer right up to the lake shore. You know what I'm saying? So please, and I'm not trying to damage anyone, step on it. I just think I think as far as polluting the lakes, we shouldn't have ever had lakefront property. We should have had them back 200 foot from the shore.
Jim, I will tell you.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's all I'm saying. I'm just trying to open up everyone's.
Right. Okay, I'll put you on the list.
Without offending anyone.
Karen had a point she wanted to make next.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I am a Laker, just for everybody to know. And I said that at a soil and water conservation, they had at a farm. I said that directly to the farmer. I am not against farming. I'm not against CAFOs. But we do have one single farmer. And I've heard from several people that they are trying to get better, but we should also try to meet with them and see how we can get them to work on their own also. So we can come together and talk, not yell at each other.
Let's put them on the subcommittee. Okay, well, no.
I think for a subcommittee, I would like to ask one person out in the audience if he would sit on it, Kevin Stockwell.
Yeah, I would.
Evan's here, hey.
Okay, so before we get there, yeah, I mean, again, that'll have to be part of a motion that we make, and I
Right.
apologize, I'm too steeped in part of your procedure sometimes, but okay. So I do, I mean, so Jake wants to talk, and then Reba with the extension, or somebody from the Farm Bureau? Because I think now we're kind of triangulating, right? So if any, I'm gonna ask Jake to make his comment, and then if Reba or Farm Bureau, if you guys have, yeah, raise your hand. I knew you were here. Okay. Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the one thing, we thought we were on the agenda tonight as Clinton had invited us to, we prepared the presentation for this. It's about a half hour. So, I mean, we would want your feedback because I think there's probably more work to do. And to Jim's point, I mean, I don't live on a lake anymore. I am a Laker, okay? But much of what our entire team is talking about is not just the feeding operations, okay? Part of our presentation, we have concerns like the lake where my family's been, the impact of the septics, which I've been advocating to, at Clear Lake, they put in a system. We're actually doing research to try and do similar at Little Long Lake because there's layers of things that impact it. Like you said, fertilizer. So we're talking about just even being aware of that around the lakes and all the waterways. So we're not, Clint asked us to talk on this topic, but that's all part of the broad thing. I mean, nobody can say, well, it's this one thing that caused it in your lake. It's multiple layers of things that change. But the reality is all these processes, there's more people coming, bigger boats, all this, which trust me, I'm a wake surfer and all that. I love those things, but all that has an impact and it's inconvenient with the progress we're seeing with some of the farming and all this, it all comes together and that's all part of what I think we want to discuss, so.
Yeah, and I'll refer back to you, but I should take responsibility because I thought that the presentation that was sent out was because of,
Just timing.
yeah, okay, so that was my mistake. So I misinterpreted that. But I mean, again, so we're getting to the same point, that we need to have the discussion. We need to have something drafted so we can discuss it and then, pull it apart like we would any other, ordinance rewrite, okay? And not that I want to take away from your presentation. I love PowerPoint. So again, so the idea of setting a subcommittee, so Farm Bureau for Purdue Extension, we wanted to, just let us know who you are and then we'll.
Reba Wicker, I'm the Ag Extension Educator here for Steuben County. Just from listening and having other discussions, I would go down the same road that Landon was talking about, who is going to be in charge of regulating this? You gotta have the conversation of which government or which group is gonna be taking charge. I have personal experience over in Ohio. I worked as the nutrient specialist for Williams County and Defiance County. And so I was the person that they called Soil and Water, and I was out there taking the phone calls, the complaints, and then having the conversation with the farmer about, do you have a spill happening, leakage, whatever. And every time I would go out there, the Department of Ag and then also another Soil and Water District employee was with me. So there's a lot of different moving pieces to it. So I just would say if there is going to be a board or a subcommittee, those are the conversations that you need to have.
You're on it. Good.
Would Soil and Water be a good one?
Yes.
I don't know what they do.
NRCS.
No, and they do. They've got a representative assigned to the county.
I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what their charge.
That's exactly what
It
their
would
charter
be
is.
Art for NRCS and
Yeah, this is coming together. So go ahead.
Okay, my name is Susan Lawrence. I'm the regional manager here in Northeast Indiana for Farm Bureau. And I kind of second what Reba has said, the fact that, and again, as Landon referred to, if we have something that is more stringent than the state law, you are required to enforce and pay for that enforcement. I haven't looked at Steuben County's finances to know, but I don't think you're much different than my other 7 counties. When it comes to finances, can you hire, as Clint said, an additional staff just for this? I caution you also, I know we've only talked about cattle feeding. It's very difficult when you signal out one species. And I caution you, we had a county that did that and it went to court. So, and it was dropped because they signaled out one type of species that they didn't want in their county. So, and I agree that maybe that conversation needs to be held with that family. And the fact that, if there is a spill, you have a 4-H'er with 15 animals and there's a spill, IDEM comes in and they are now regulated by IDEM. It doesn't matter the size of the operation. If there is a confirmed spill and violation filed, you have to then fall under all those guidelines and you are inspected just like any of your permitted operations are. Does not matter the size. I myself, I have 25 cows. If I have an issue, I'm regulated. Okay. So, and again, the state chemist is who regulates when it comes to manure application. The other thing that I would state is putting together this committee, I think is excellent. And I think you need to have all sides to make sure that we have agriculture represented. You have different folks. So it's an equal representation to have a conversation of how to work together because these farmers live on their farms and they drink the water. So I think that needs to be kept in mind as well.
No, and a great point, and then I'll refer to you, sir. But yeah, I mean, what I learned as I came into this role is that all of the ordinances, their preamble is that neighbors are talking to neighbors. That's where it's supposed to start. And then if there's a conflict, you refer to the ordinance. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, but I can see where that might have to be legislated, getting people to the table. But go ahead with your comments.
I'm Brent Johnson. I've been here about 4 years. This is my family from 1920 from Helmer. Okay, so But I guess we went into this with the idea that, and I'm okay with the subcommittee. I mean, that wouldn't be my choice, but I think when you bring it back, there's a lot of different ideas about what happens here, what the IDEM does. And I hear the comments about IDEM, but the truth of the matter is, for a CFO or a CAFO, they inspect it once every 5 years on an announced schedule. Okay, so that's not going to do what you want to do. Okay, and they have a lot of stuff written there, but they have the same problem with the enforcement that we're talking about here. They got all kinds of stuff written. They say they're going to come out if manure spilled on the road.
Well,
I've never seen that around where I am.
and I get it.
So I guess what we were interested in, and it's okay if you trust the subcommittee to come back to your whole group and everybody in the group goes, okay, you guys did all the research, so we're good. We're not going to ask those questions. But ours was kind of just a general, and we can send it to you and you can look at it. I mean, it looks great on paper, what they say IDEM does, but there are counties that require 120 acres for a CAFO. Okay, there are 27 counties that require additional manure plans that Rick Scheib's talking about. Okay, and there's 23 counties that require setbacks from recreation areas. Now, we only got 101 lakes here, or whatever it is. There's no setbacks from any of those. Okay, it's not there. So, and you all understand the comprehensive plan. You read the comprehensive plan, and there's 6 or 7 places in the comprehensive plan that just aren't going to work with what we got here. So, and we have no problem sitting on that and doing it in any way you want us to do that. Just we want the same thing everybody else does. We want to live in a county where we can drink our water and we can sit next to people I mean, I chose with my family to have 4 West Pointers and spend 32 years in the Army. I could have chose to do this. Okay, I'm not against this, but I chose to do something else. And I also choose to live in Steuben County.
Good point.
Can I mention one thing you just said?
Sure, go ahead.
Is there anybody from here that works for the state? Good. Everybody knows I'm not. Right? I've talked about this 100 times. I agree with 99.
Recorded.
It's all right. I'm bigger than that. I agree with about 95 to 99% of what Mr. Johnson said on there. The only issue I take with, and this is across the board, and this is not just on confined feeding and not on IDEM, this goes to DNR, this goes to any other state agency. Just because some lawmaker made some law that made them feel good back in the day, and there was an agency to take care of it, and they're no longer funded or capable or willing to take care of it, doesn't make it my job. Okay? We're fighting that fight with the DNR. If you guys had any idea the amount of crap we're taking from the state right now, just because they're not willing or able or funded to do their job.
We've been dealing with the DNR issue for 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've said, we've
Other than
things.
that,
I see all the
I'm 100% on
the
board
heads
with
nodding, so everybody's in agreement here. Sir, did you have a point?
Yeah, I'd like you guys to put a real good plan together. Because I want to copy it, because I'm on the Plan Commission in DeKalb. And also, our issue is chickens. We have just started down to County Road 52, St. Joe area. Had 27,000 heads of chickens going to 2 facilities.
Still under the limit though, right?
It is under the limit.
That's under limit. So we have the same problem as you have. I also have 2 farms, one in Steuben County. This is funny as hell. Steuben, my water in Steuben County goes to DeKalb. My farm in DeKalb County circles around, comes to Steuben. So I can put a CAFO on my and the water comes this way.
Take that, Steuben.
Yeah, really. But I agree with her is that I farm and also raise cattle. I was a dairy farmer up until 2 years ago. And we watched everything we did. And, you may say IDEM or stuff like that, but I've had IDEM pull in my driveway twice, accuse me of dumping too much manure on fields. Luckily, the 2 fields that I did dump that was dumped on happened not to be mine. So it happened not to be mine, and they were looking for someone else. So they had called up there and they had to investigate. They do some investigating on it, but
And that highlights a larger issue that again, and we made recommendations back to the person that made the complaint, was that some of this we won't solve, and it's gonna have to be our legislators, and it's great that we've got state legislative race for this district right now, and those should be the next people on the call list. Like, what are you guys gonna do? Okay, because it does, it's gotta be solved legislatively at that point. But again, so these are all great things. Is there anything? Go ahead.
I just have a couple of things. I guess one, my personal opinion is that I think we need to put together a plan, not an ordinance, of what to do should these things arise. I live on a lake. We own a farm. That farm's 134 acres on the same lake. I think that we're giving farmers a bad rep here, and that there are a lot of very good farmers out there. Absolutely. There are a lot of farmers that are more conscientious about what's going into those fields than your neighbor is with their fertilizer, or where their waste is going, or where their sewer's going, or anything like that. So I think we need to give them a little bit more credit than we are, but I think we need to give more effort to putting together a plan as opposed to an ordinance, because we don't have the enforceability. We don't have the resources to do an ordinance on this, and we don't have, this is just my opinion, you can throw it out the window. We just don't have the funding or the staff to do it. Now, if we could put together a plan, take some education, and give people the direction, Rick, you have a complaint, where do you go? Because I don't know where to send you, and we can put together a plan that, everybody knows, all right, these are the things, these are the steps. If you have a complaint, this is step 1. If that complaint doesn't happen, this is step 2, as opposed to saying, well, you've got 299, now you've got to have 10-acre manure storage, you have to have all these other regulations, you have to go to IDEM, you have to have all this other stuff. I guess that was my 2 cents. I don't think we put together an ordinance for this, and I don't think that Rick would have to put together an ordinance to bring back for approval. I think it's more of a, what do we do? How do we manage this before it becomes an issue? Because as we've all been told, and everybody's told us, look, Steuben County is different, Hunter Lakes. This is different than any other county in the state of Indiana. So we have to address it differently, and, go on to the legislation portion of that too. Well, you're not going to typically find legislation that's going to specifically work towards one county. It's statewide. So that's also a different animal. So I think this is much bigger than just, we don't like 300 cattle or 299 cattle on the street, or there's 61 and 16 square miles. I get it, but there's a lot of barriers that we have to cross to get to what some of these requests.
And we did, we were working on a DNR carve out specifically for Steuben County. So we know it can be done. You just got to find a legislator that's willing to say, yes, you are unique. We'll write it specifically as a carve out. Which again, that's politics as well. So
we had DNR staff state that we were a unique county.
That last meeting went really well too. We're on a roll. Jeff, nice take what Landon said, great idea, and build on it and steal it as my own.
Again, so we're in the midst of this discussion. So yeah, I think that, again, if we make a motion that either comes up with an ordinance or a plan, or if it goes as part, as a subsection in the comprehensive plan.
Right. What he said is kind of brilliant based upon what we've talked about already.
Can you call my wife?
The idea was.
What's the website?
We've got a group here that's looking at a more holistic approach. Landon came up with an idea that takes that holistic approach and come up with a plan for it. We are currently in the midst of a 2-year update plan on our ordinance where we happen to have an attorney with the group that was the water guy.
Things are.
What if we take this subcommittee with their information, come up with a plan, send it to him? He can come up with the idea. We're going to take it to the state. We're going to try to regulate something locally. Are we going to put together some kind of standards for the health, morals, and general welfare of the county? And then in there also have directives to other agencies in case of something that lies outside of that.
Footnoting. Perfect.
So I think we already have a perfect team or several teams in place to handle this. Now, use the wrong word in planning where you wanted something done imminent and quick. It's government, I'm sorry, red tape that was the founding fathers, not me. So that'll take a little bit more time, but if we're going to go to a subcommittee anyway, take their info, bring it back as a plan, move forward. Now, in the meantime, if Rick wants to move faster on setting up some kind of standards, where basically, I think when you look at chapter 9, there's a carve out where it exempts all that stuff, all those numbers, if you're in ag or EC or have an actual farm. All that other stuff goes out the window. It doesn't have to. That's an easy fix.
But then
You can have
again,
one set of standards for people,
right,
hobby farms, and then another set of standards with similar numbers but different for ag, EC, and actual traditional farm.
Rick, am I seeing your hand going up and down in agreement?
So it's
I'm
two
just
fronts.
listening.
Okay, so
I look like agreement.
I saw a hand back here, ma'am.
That was just mine. I'm Vicki Lamb. I'm a nurse and I'm part of, the team here. I focus on a lot of research in the public health interest, the environmental effects of that. But I just want to let you all know that the community and our team has been going out in the community for a couple years now and talking about this and hearing what other people have to say about the bad actor here. They don't put down farming.
But let's be careful. I had to curtail myself from saying they because it does.
I mean, the community we talk to, which are the lake communities, organizations, they're beginning to understand what's going on and have a lot of questions and then, call up, Rick and share their concerns like they do their state reps. We hear that from the community we live in. But they do expect our Board of Commissioners to respond. That's the feedback that we're getting. So,
And I'm happy to give it to them.
that's great. I'm so happy to hear that. I mean, this is music to our ears that we've been working on this for a long time. I was just at a Lions meeting last night at Pleasant Lake. 30 people there. Over and over, they said, what are the commissioners doing about it? What are the commissioners doing it? There's a great weight that's on your shoulders, whether you want it to be there or not. I'm delivering this message. So we hear that over and over. So
I'm tickled. I think this is great. This is the process.
I'm sure you are. My point is, knowing that, and I know you do, and I'm just repeating that likely, we have been working really hard coming up with some solutions. Folks can join the subcommittee that we think would bring some value. There are models out there as fast as these farms have been popping up. Science and other counties have been working real hard to adjust to, because it's a countrywide problem, really. And Steuben County is got an issue too that's not unlike some of the other, states.
Okay.
So I just wanted to share that sense of urgency again, like Jake was saying, it is out there.
No, I agree. Okay.
I'd just like to know, what do you think, Don? I mean, is your opinion that going that direction?
Number one, our knowledge of Indiana politics is limited because my experience is there's only one unique county in Indiana, and that's Marion.
Yeah.
They have almost the majority of the state legislature in one county. So getting anything passed through the state legislature by our representative here, whoever it is
tough.
that is a kind way to put it. The other thing is, the only sure way that I know of improving water quality is if everyone would go home and shoot a goose. Because I was there when Clear Lake did their study for their sewer project. The primary source of bacteria in Clear Lake at that time was the goose population.
Dirty birds.
So
Okay.
that's my thought.
Jeff, good question. Anybody else? Okay.
I'll just make one more statement too. I'm really fearful. I guess I'm not convinced at all to try to go stricter than state standards. And especially even if a small farm, if what it's true, if they're 15 cows and they're doing a horrible job, they're going to get regulated. Boy. I'll leave it at that. And well, I'm just saying, like, you're gonna really, I'm not on board at all with making things stricter than what state standard says in the story. That's where I'm at right now.
No, it's an impasse. I get it.
Because we have awesome Lakers we have Lakers who aren't as good. We all saw that, let me say this really quick yet and then wrap it up. Give me 1 minute. We all saw that, the kids partying out in the ocean that took the garbage cans. Remember that? You know, we got bad, well, anyways, we got bad, you know what I'm saying? And we got some really good farmers. In fact, I know all these farmers here personally. These are great guys.
We don't doubt that one bit, man.
I don't like the idea of putting on stricter standards when the state says.
Okay. But I guess I'm with Jim a little bit. So if 300s, you want to go back to 150, or do you want to go to 100, or do you want to go to 50 or 20? Where are you going to stop with this whole thing? I mean, what is your goal out there? Do you want to see no agriculture out there in these areas?
Absolutely not. That's not my goal at all.
Do you have definitive numbers about where you're trying to get to?
We are simply going to lay out what we know to be the facts to start the discussion. We requested to bring the presentation. We'd love to share it and get feedback because we need people like Jim to say what I don't know, what the problems are. We just want to start the conversation because everywhere I go in my township or in Angola, now that I've been involved, everybody asks me, how's it going? What are you doing? Okay. And I would love to be able to report back to the people in my township that, yeah, the planning commission, and I shared with a number of people, we've been preparing for weeks just to share some of the facts because a lot of people that we encounter are like, well, IDEM's got that. They're doing it. So we did a lot of research on what they do and what they don't do. We've heard from the Farm Bureau on what from their perspective they do. But we talked numerous times to IDEM and have itemized what they're saying they do and don't do. But again, I have hay on my 80 acres and sell to a neighbor farmer to eat beef that's raised by a great guy. I support his kids at the fair. I grew up doing that same kind of stuff. So I'm all for the good actors. The problem we have is we have one or two that are way outside the lines and cutting corners, and they're ruining it and making a bad, look at everybody. I think Austin, like me, we're in the same, different area of the insurance business. We battle it out with the used cars guys and attorneys for the worst people you encounter, right? Nobody wants to talk about health insurance. But just like you as farmers, do you want, one or two bad apples to make everybody look at you guys like you're the enemy? That's bullshit. And that's why we got to, be clear on some of it.
Hold on. So I had Kevin, he was next to the list.
So just a couple things to highlight what was said and what here. You're absolutely right that IDEM routinely inspects every 5 years and you know when they're coming. That's absolutely true. But IDEM is a complaint-based organization. If somebody complains, we have a CAFO, cows down the other corner, southwest corner there by Hudson. You live under the premonition to know that if one of my neighbors complain, IDEM will pull in tomorrow. They don't mess around. I have not had a complaint. I have great neighbors. You try your neighbors. That's good. No. But I know of other people who have got turned in, and I know one farm a year ago, IDEM showed up. And I asked them, why are you here? Oh, we just got a phone call. You were home and we just wanted to come see what you were doing. They were doing everything just fine. Good operation. But somebody called. So while I agree, I can see why people don't like the way IDEM works. It is a complaint-based organization and they will show up. There's things going on in this county that I completely agree with you guys. It shouldn't be the way it is. From sitting back in the standpoint that I am a regulated farm and know what I have to do. And there's things being done that, to Jeff's point, I don't know what the number is. I don't really think there is a number. But to Rick's point of making everybody that has livestock have a manure management plan, a storage plan, which, by the way, if you have them all inside your barn, according to IDEM rules, that will count as manure storage. Because we have a couple barns like that. The manure storage, because it's pin pack or bedded with straw or sawdust, that is the manure storage. Then we also have a big ass lagoon that holds a lot of liquid. But and those that were out there with the lake life class the other night, we were in the middle of hauling it and explained it. And
be more than happy to sit, explain all of this to whoever. In your definitions, I've read them after I heard this was going on. They are as vague. I mean, you go back to the definitions, we fall into all three of those categories. We're CAFO, we're the
CFO and
CFO. We have animals on other farms that are not regulated. We have 2 farms that are under 300 head that are legally not required to be under IDIM. So I am the operator of the whole massive, I don't know what you do with that, but I read them and I thought, well, we fall under all 3 of them. What does that mean to the county? I mean, okay, so I have, I just had no idea what it meant. So yeah, it's definitely an issue. I've had conversations with a lot of people in this room and it needs to be addressed. And so that's just, I just wanted to bring the points up.
Paul, did you have something?
Yes, Paul Longville, a Laker. And so I would just ask the planning commission and the subcommittee, if it does come to fruition, to not shy away from restrictions that are more restrictive than IDEM. There's nothing wrong with that if there's a need for them. In this county, everybody says it's unique. Well, if it's unique, then it ought to have some unique restrictions to make sure it stays that way. So that's just my point.
No, I agree.
No, I like it.
That was good. That was a good point. That's why I like that. Okay. Okay, so I got 2 more hands here. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add really quick. Steuben's doing a lot of things right. Okay. Not every county in Indiana has a zoning ordinance. Okay, Steuben has a zoning ordinance. Okay. Only 27 counties require a special exception for a CFO or CAFO. And we're one of them. Got to go to the BZA, got to get a special exception. Okay, so 27 out of the 81 counties that have or 64 counties that talk about CFOs, and we're one of those. We require 40 acres for that. Okay, only 24 counties have an acreage requirement. And by the way, IDEM has no acreage requirement other than where you're going to put the manure. That's their requirement. Okay, you got to have a site plan for the building, but you can put the manure in the canal county. Okay, we're not going to do that. Okay, and IDEM's okay. Show us a plan to put the manure. They don't care what the ground looks like. They don't care if the USDA says it's going to run right into your lake. They're not involved in it. We're one of 33 counties that have a setback, 300-foot setback, and we're one of only 3 counties that has a setback from all sides. So I mean, a lot of this was about the things that are being done right in Steuben. But continue. But it gets to the point of, are all these other counties that have gone further than that, are they all wrong? I mean, if you got 5 counties that say you got to be outside a mile from a lake, I don't know. I mean, we got more lakes than they do, but and you've got 17 counties that say you're going to follow the Purdue Extension manure requirements, and you're going to do this, and you're going to have enhanced stuff. You got 8 counties that say you're going to have odor control provisions. Hey, you're going to set back, you're going to screen it, whatever. So, I mean, I guess that's just our point of,
We're not advocating for all those.
No, we're not. We're just saying.
We're stating the facts of what's going on out there.
No, and again, this is a great discussion. I think that we need to bring everybody together. Sir, you had one more comment?
Yeah, first off, I did have, and I still do have cattle in Steuben County, the calves. So I still have an active farm here. Now, all I was going to make the comment is to Jeff. He was the one that asked, where do we stop? That was our same discussion 2 weeks ago at the DeKalb Plan Commission. Where do you stop? And we could not figure out. We set it aside to look at it after we get our new plan put together. And we don't know where to stop because we have chickens come. We're not cattle, chickens coming in. And we're afraid that it's gonna come in pretty thick down there in the St. Joe, Grayburg area and stuff. I mean,
Underneath the IDEM.
yeah, underneath all 27,000. And like I told them up there, Elkhart, there's one corner in Elkhart where there's 4 Amish. Here's the road. There's 27 here, 27 here, 27. And that's what my biggest fear is. We don't have no ordinance or anything to spread them out.
And that's, our past discussions that some of you weren't here for, we're talking, the gentrification of the county. That there's, people building farms, subbing farms, but then they're also selling off land for development, so, again, there's some extreme things to be able to do and say, nope, no residential in an ag, a previously agged, zoning area. But that's so restrictive that, again, you're going to, make contractors and builders angry. So I think this is where we need to go. So yeah.
Just to Mr. Van Wee's point, you asked me about it yesterday, the day before. I have been in contact with the planner. He has my former job in DeKalb.
Right.
We have been discussing. We are not beyond the point of what are you currently doing? I have not been discussing future plans with him, but we have been discussing what we're both currently doing. And right now with what we're currently doing, we're on the same page. I have no way of knowing what we're planning on doing, but that's one of the things where that would be another resource. As they move forward, we can cherry pick, steal stuff off of them. They can steal off of us. I think they'll be okay with it. But there is an open line of communication with another county going through the same exact process right now. So we're not alone. What all I want to say, there is contact, communication between us.
Okay.
We may not have the lakes, but we have 2 major water reservoirs under the Butler area that we have to watch. And one of them's not only 130 feet deep. So, we have.
And the aquifer, we have a sense to forget about that sometimes. Yeah, it's not too far below all that. So we have to remember that. Okay, so as I'm listening to all this, so I get, my recommendation is, okay, so did everybody that's in the audience, everybody signed in on the sheet outside? Why don't we start with people, on that list, go mark your name with a star or something if you want to, be contacted about this committee. Okay, let's start there. And then, I think you should be on the committee, and I don't mind chairing the committee just so you guys can talk. And I can help manage that, or however this board thinks we should do that. But again, the idea would either to come down on the idea of either a plan or a series of ordinances, whichever, again, even just to plug up the holes. That's what we're doing, in the plan right now, and in some of these other ordinance rewriting, we're plugging the holes that are there. And I think that's, we can bite off those little bites like that, or we can make it big and say, nope, we're going to rewrite the whole series of definitions and, come up with a number and give it to the commissioners and let them go with it. Because again, all this is a recommendation of the commissioners, and, our standing commissioner on the board has been woefully quiet. I'd love to hear what his feedback is. But the idea is that, we're going to make a recommendation now, and then that's where the public is really going to be applied. That's where the, publishing and the public hearings and all that gets hammered out. Because again, I'm not an elected official. I don't want to get in trouble and not, pay for it with a vote. I'm going to let the elected officials do that. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. So if I may, I'm a little bit confused too, because I heard 2 things. I heard Marion County is the biggest county. Good luck changing it. And I also heard we can't discriminate against animals now either. So I don't know. I guess I think we're running around the street. Okay.
We can't discriminate a certain species.
A certain species, that's what I'm saying.
We gotta take them all as a whole.
I feel like I was dog chasing the tail.
I would see the same. So Ken, I would add
just a couple of thoughts. Number one, I'd like to thank everybody for coming in here and sharing. There's been a lot of very good conversation, so I didn't have to say.
No one to hold them, right?
But a good point that came up first was our planning director. It was pointed out that he invited a self-appointed committee that has gone out and spent hours, days, weeks going around and getting the information. And they came prepared here to make a presentation. Earlier, you said it'd take maybe a half hour. I, for one, am more than willing to sit here and maybe, just maybe, what they have found out already is stuff that could be shared with the committee. And it would be very useful to them and their efforts, and maybe be very useful to us hearing what they have found out. That it's obvious that this is a very important topic to Steuben County and everybody in this room. So I'm suggesting the chairman allow them to speak. They're here. They want to tell us what they found out and what's it going to hurt. Thank you.
I can cancel dinner. I'm kidding.
I'll buy dinner, Jeff, if you want.
No, I get it. If people want, I don't, if they, I'm totally open to that. It was, you know, and again, and I'll take responsibility that I didn't understand, you know, what the presentation was for. But yeah, I agree. It's not something that we shouldn't do. If the rest of the board would like to see it, and we can take the half hour to do it, I'm not opposed to it.
Like to see it.
Yeah.
Oh.
They're given an opportunity. They should have the opportunity.
You have his.
Right there.
Let's do it.
Yes.
We're not voting on this.
If somebody wants to leave. Yeah, and I mean, and there'll be copies. We make all the meeting materials available online after the meeting, so everybody can see it there if they want
Jake,
to. If
thanks
they
for
need to.
coming in.
You can watch it on YouTube.
You can watch it on YouTube.
Watch it on YouTube.
Yes. Come on.
You are nailing it.
No, one of them is going, is it live now?
It's live right now, and then the replay is available as soon as we're done.
Seems like there's enough for everybody. I might give everybody two, I'm not sure.
Thank you, sir.
I love posts.
This doesn't work.
That's wrong.
Yes.
Did Charlie? He dropped him on the floor and then ended it.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's slippery.
I have one for minutes.
I'm out there.
No, I'll take it back.
Hey, Jay.
I got one.
You have one to finish. Well, I still finish that when you get the shoes. I know, right?
Okay, is everybody ready? Jake, the floor is yours. Go for it.
This doesn't pay near as well as my day job, so this has been 1,000% volunteer effort. So to start off the presentation, you'll just go ahead. We just highlight a couple of pieces from the comprehensive plan adopted in 2016 that I think really underpin, you know, kind of the charge of the Planning Commission, and currently the commissioners, obviously, you know, they consulted experts nationally, look at the local resources, but, you know, we've highlighted some areas. So the following are the most important factors. This is from Chapter 3 in Managing the Growth. Most important factors regarding the protection of environmentally sensitive areas listed in priority. Number 1, protect the water quality of lakes, ponds, and streams. I don't think anybody here would argue that the lakes are an extremely valuable asset and one thing that everybody thinks of when they think of Steuben County. Number 2 is protect the quality of local groundwater supply. I don't think anybody understands, you know, that more than each of us when we take a drink from our well. And then to protect and preserve the native vegetation, natural drainage within the 100-year floodplain, but especially the filtration areas within that 49 to 90 feet of the water body, shoreline, or bank. Now, we all know none of this is easy, to Jim's point and what Clint shared, but this is what was very clearly laid out. Go ahead to the next slide, sir. So Chapter 3 continued, you know, general agricultural land use are dedicated for agricultural operations such as crop production, highlighted here, the raising of animals, you know, equestrian, tree farms, vineyards, confined feeding operations, because the future land use map does not show conservation buffers around water bodies. Intense agricultural uses should be required to install or preserve buffers or filtration strips to not impact surface water quality. So moving into chapter 5, nurture the environmental quality, assuring clean water, air, and minimizing flooding and protection of scenic landscapes. So objective 1 is protect the water quality streams like watersheds, reduce discharges from point source pollutants through education, monitoring, new regulations, enforcement of existing, and incentives. And so we kind of wind up here with restrict land uses was the final charge under the comprehensive plan that pose the greatest risk to pollute or impair surface water when located within determined proximities to streams, tributaries, swales, major ditches, and lakes. So go ahead to the next one. I'll bring up one of our other experts.
Good evening, Jim Schiffler, 320 Lane 130, Fremont. This map here comes from Indiana Map, so it's from the state of Indiana. It was originally put together in 2006, and the most recent update was 2023. So this is current as of 2023. This is specifically Steuben County. And just the things to call out here are, this is kind of backing up. This isn't just ag or what we're talking about in terms of confined feeding, but just the overall county, which you'll see that the dark blue are lakes. So you can see where they're at throughout the county. They're concentrated in some areas. And then the lighter blue is wetlands, and in the green is where we've got some forested areas or grasslands that are still natural. So throughout the county, and then finally your yellow and tan are pasture and or cultivated crops, right? And then the pink or red areas are where we've got more urban areas where it's outside of the jurisdiction of what we're talking about. But as the county's developed, you can see that there's a lot of integration between these various types of land. And so it's not like we can say, well, let's start over and let's segregate stuff a little bit and let's do our farming in this part of the county and let's do our commercial business in this part of the county, move retail over here, and we can separate all this. So it's really more about how do we protect the water and still do the things we need to do in the county to continue to grow and thrive and have viable businesses, right? But still protect the water resource. And so Jake had just mentioned those buffers. And so how do we develop a plan and ordinances with riparian buffers that protect the water, but also protect our right to live and use the land in a way that's responsible and productive? So we can go to the next slide. This is from, it's from IDEM, but it's what gets reported to EPA Region 5, which we're part of, the Great Lakes region. And so this is the impaired waters map. And so 3 different colors on here to call out. One is the red is where, whether it's a line or it's a filled in area, this is where IDEM, this 303D list, it's not on their list to support. So if you're looking for dollars to help take care of things, they'd say we're not supporting these particular streams because we don't see an issue there, or lakes. The purple is not assessed. So they don't know one way or the other. There hasn't been either a complaint or an official study done in those particular areas to know whether or not their 303D monies would support helping with cleanups or other things that might be going on in those areas. The green on this map is where there's identified areas that are impaired, and they're on the 303D list where if you're applying to do something in those areas, you would be prioritized in terms of support. And they have 5 different levels. Each of you, I think, we forwarded a spreadsheet to Charlie earlier in the week that has a complete list. And you'll, it's not, I don't believe it's with you today. I show an example on the next slide.
That was included.
It's sorted to Steuben County, and the first 4 pages have what's parameter category 5. So those are those areas that are supported by IDEM EPA dollars to help with cleanup projects in those areas. And then you'll also see on that list kind of what's the designated use. If it's a river or stream, it's probably a fish or other aquatic life. If it's a lake, it's full body contact. Some streams are full body contact, but it just gives you an idea of looking at the county where we already have established issues, where we're not keeping our human practices, regardless of what type of practice it is, we're not keeping it separated enough from the water, that the water is not impaired, right? So, yeah.
So, and I guess, yeah, I mean, the stark, view of that is you look at the Lake James chain of lakes are red, not supported, but then just South Crooked Lake and all three basins are fully supported.
Correct, we have issues there. So they're impaired waterways. They're impaired waterways, officially recognized as impaired waterways by IDEM and EPA Region 5. So we just wanted this as a place to start. How's our land use look, right? Not our comprehensive plan, how we've designated property, but how's the land being used? And where do we have issues today that are known and understood as a county? And what do we want to do about, again, helping protect the water resources so that we have a healthy community for both people and the livestock that need to exist in the county.
Jim. So the next piece, this is simply just to help with the definition, because there's been a lot of discussion about, what's a CFO and what's a CAFO. So if it's over 300, equal to or over 300, that's a CFO by IDEM, up to 1,000. 1,000 and over, you're talking about a CAFO at that point. But a lot of the issues that we're seeing are, to Rick's point, under 300 head. And especially when we get into highly integrated industrialized operations where it seems that is part of, it's a conglomeration effect of many of those that are F299 or below. Okay, so we just want to lay that out. And we highlighted the cattle because that's what was asked of us, but this lays out clearly, for all the other species as well. Okay.
But do we, and are there any other counties that have numbers different than these?
For the report, maybe, not the ones I work at.
That's the state, those are the state numbers.
So nobody's gone more restrictive than that.
Oh, I don't know that. I don't know that part.
Only from IDEM, only one county has stricter numbers than those. That's Adams County.
Yeah.
I know the ones I've talked to haven't. Like I said, we're at the very beginning of these conversations.
Like I said, just to set the parameter, but okay, we know what we're working. Okay.
Yes. Interesting. So I'm filling in for Shannon King on the next couple slides. Shannon's been a lifetime resident. She lives in the southeastern part of Steuben County. And I mean, her number one, her concerns are about how close that large number of cattle are to protected compromised waterways. The impact on the infrastructure around her, she says, it used to be country, but now I live in an industrial zone. She says there's more traffic on her county road than there is if she lived over here, on Harcourt or something like that, as far as an industrialized operation. So the map that she put together, this actually shows just the 6 CFOs that are recognized by IDEM today, kind of their locations. Again, we're not picking on these. We think these are probably some of the best run outside of the one that was fined by the state, okay? Not to mention anything, this is not about, race, religion, what their cultural beliefs are or anything. This is about right and wrong as far as we're concerned.
And I'm going to correct you there because I spoke to the person that filed the complaint and it went to that very quickly after I outlined what her options were. And that I found that offensive and I told her that. So let's not say them and they as farmers,
Exactly.
We're all part of this county. Let's talk about it from that standpoint. Okay.
Exactly. So the next slide, this one actually just is highlighted kind of that area, and this is right by Shannon's home. So she submitted the map to share. So this is what she counted, where we get to a highly concentrated area where we're estimating that, 15 to 18,000 head in that, 16 square mile area that basically have, zero oversight from IDEM or anybody else. Okay. So that's just to highlight one concern. Now, imagine if this continues, aggressively across the rest of the county. it's going to be, impacting all of us greatly. I personally, to Jim's slide, Little Long Lake, where I grew up, we have numerous of these in Michigan, which I know you can't regulate, but trust me, like 15 years ago, I started getting a reaction in the lake. It's Planctotrix algae. I had to tell my daughters that were fifth generation, like, you're not going to go swimming in the lake anymore. Not a real fun thing when my family's been there for over 70 years enjoying that pristine lake, okay? So that's what's motivated me to say, hey, we gotta, and it goes beyond our borders here, just of the county. So just a side note of that, Jim's team and our lake, it's at Little Long Lake, did a lot of our own coordination with the Steuben Lakes Council, our own testing. We know that even though IDEM doesn't recognize Little Long Lake as compromised, we're pretty damn confident it has been based on our own, research, but the water testing we're doing doesn't get recognized by IDEM, okay? And ours is largely not impacted by even farms that are in Steuben, but there's multiple factors, more boats, more people, no septic and sewer system. It's all septics on that little lake. So again, there's many layers to some of those problems.
Do you know what are the shadings on that map mean?
Those are all CFOs. Those are confined feeding.
What's the green one mean versus the purple one?
Now, those are townships.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, yeah, I thought that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
My name is Vicki Lamb, and I'm a registered nurse and psychiatric manager. And the team that I work with, I have to introduce myself a little bit so everyone gets to know me. And you get to know you a little bit better too. I work as a pediatric nurse in trauma and transplant. When I was in Cincinnati, Assistant Medical Children's Hospital. When I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, about 23 years ago, I worked for the Lutheran Health Network and became a certified case manager. And that's doing what's best for the patient. I'm the type of nurse that you want on a But I'm really here today talking to you, sharing some things about me, because 26 years ago, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. You might not even know that, but you wanted me to share. I was treated with Taxol. That was a brand new drug that I developed from the bark of the Pacific yew tree. And that was done by scientists with the help of the Department of Agriculture. And that was a new drug that treated aggressive cancer. And it's still used today. And because of that drug, I'm here today. I think I'm supposed to be here and be in front of you all, working to, help the environment and protect it, because you never know, there might be another Pacific yew tree here in Steuben County. So I'm all in for protecting this special, precious land. As some of you know, that I'm Vicki Lamb, and I'm introducing myself so you know you more you know me. So I'm basically on this team for a research and rationale person, since I'm a nurse and very involved in this. I personally feel, since these animal feeding operations have such a local impact, it only makes sense that we're here today standing in front of you requesting that local boards like yourself take back this information and develop a vision with your new plan to protect our health and the environment. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the risks that the previous folks talked about. It was in chapter 5, 1.5 that mentioned the risks. I have about 4 that I'm going to talk to you about that need some urgent consideration. So what is at risk? From confined feeding operations to contamination. The primary health issue is accumulation of untreated manure, urine, and waste, which is stored in a manner that can pollute the air, surface, and groundwater. New studies, again, that's what I'm about, and I'm a great resource person, shows communities near these animal feeding operations report increased health problems, increased respiratory illness, kidney disease, infant mortality, and an increased incidence of cancer from pollution damage. So what is pollution damage? These are new terms that are coming into the science vocabulary since this CAFO environment has exploded into our world also. Pollution damage. It is the negative impacts of the land, water, and air quality caused by the untreated manure. Here's a study for you. The Indiana State Nutrient Reduction Strategy Plan, which is out in 2018, has calculated 90% of the nitrogen and 75% of the phosphorus in our surface water does come from a non-point source that is primarily agriculture. That's a manual that you might want to Google and just take a look at. It is a great research. This runoff that we're talking about, which is a non-point source, picks up other nutrients along the way, not only the nitrogen and phosphorus, but pathogens, hormones, and antibiotics, and sends it into our water supply. Then it becomes a nutrient pollution. Who got on board with this? The American Public Health Association. Another, article and publication you might want to look at because nutrient pollution is the #1 threat to our water quality. So the American Public Health Association issued a statement in 2019, and I'm going to quote: "The enormous accumulation of manure and other untreated waste is stored and disposed of in a manner that pollutes the air, surface, and groundwater, and it poses risk to the environment and to human health. Workers, neighbors, communities are affected. Animal feeding operations, regulations, and the environment have failed to adequately protect human health and the environment, and they support regulations and enforcement to adequately protect the public health."
Okay.
What else is at risk? Cancers and cancer. Poor water quality is leading to nitrate pollution, causing the risk of cancer, bladder cancer, gastric, ovarian, thyroid, and others. The National Institute of Health has shown some of the highest levels of nitrate in our shallow wells and surface water runoff from animal feedlots. Iowa is a scientific hotspot right now. 300 new cases per year of nitrate attributable cancer. Just Google it. If you just are sitting and bored, look at what's happening in Iowa, something new. Look at the cancer registry. Not me just saying that, but National Cancer Registry. What's been new going on in Iowa? Influx of animal feeding operations and nitrate measurable in their wells. 300 cases new per year. But it's happening in Indiana also, Elkhart, Vermilion, and Miami, nitrate showing up in the well water. What else can be at risk? Costs that the local taxpayer will have to pay and assume these costs for cleanup that are likely to increase in the coming years. Healthcare costs due to antibiotic resistance, increased admission rates up to 25 more times, and increased length of stay. But what can be less risky? Confined feeding operations, a comprehensive plan committee like we're meeting with tonight, communities and citizens like we have here tonight, working together, coexisting and compromising. I heard that already. Subcommittees are great. We're very open to that. We've been working really hard looking into this for how many years now? Several. So we welcome that opportunity. I do want to say there is a sense of urgency, like Jake said. This is the opportunity to take a step forward, dare to do something different. Just because we see the model as we see it now doesn't have to be the model of the future. Think about that. I welcome partnering or answering questions with anybody. Thank you for your time.
I want to say right up front that I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Stockel here.
Yeah.
in front of the BZA, and you've certainly forgotten more about manure handling than I would. Okay, so, but I do think, I thank you, Mr. Stone, for bringing that up and your interest. Mr. Scheib and everybody's here. So giving us a chance to talk about what we've learned. This is what IDEM says they do. Okay, this is a chart that, so we're all on the same sheet of music about what they say they do. They're really interested when they talk about facility design and construction, they're really interested in the newer structures. Okay, and what those look like and where they are and how they talk about facility setbacks, but those setbacks are probably not going to be in keeping what you want to protect your waterways here. They're very minimal. For example, 100 foot from public roads. I would think you would probably want more than that. They do deal with manure handling and storage, but they only really care about runoff from the storage facility. Anything that's distributed out or runs into the groundwater, that is not regulated by IDEM. So once it leaves the storage facility and something happens to get in the waterways, I mean, okay, they come take a look at it. That's not something that they normally look at during this process. They do some monitoring, record keeping. I talked about that. And they do some handling of emergency spills. It's supposed to happen within 2 hours of emergency spill. I don't think part of the committee may want to talk about biodigesters, because I know Clint brought that up. We're not prepared to talk about that tonight. But that's an issue that's going to come to Steuben at some point. And kind of like you all did with the solar stuff, maybe it's something we ought to look at in the subcommittee. So I thank you too for the subject. Next slide. This is what IDEM doesn't do.
There are some entrepreneurs that are very interested in methane capture, so good opportunity.
As I said earlier, outside of what they require to spread the manure, there are no acreage requirements. So you could have, I should use the number 8,000. You could have 8,000 head of cattle on 2 acres if you could get them in there. And as long as you're taking the manure somewhere else, IDEM wouldn't care about that. They don't really monitor public roadways. They say right up front, you can't spill anything on the roadway. They don't accept, the Lakes Council has done a lot of third water testing all around there, specifically down in that area where those 61 barns are that you saw. They will not accept third water testing.
They accept their own.
They accept their own, but you can't, for the 48 sites or 54 sites or how many the Lake Council does, I think you tried to ask them to look at those and they have not. They don't consider the soil classification. Several of the times we come to the BZA, we've shown the soil that they want to put the manure on, and it's been, the USDA has said that's red. As soon as you put it on there, it's going to run off into whatever's there. So there's no consideration for that. They do have a 400-foot setback from public buildings, but there isn't any setback for this recreation, churches, etc. There are no air quality provisions in the state of Indiana by law. So there are no laws that do that. So there are no odor control provisions in IDEM. And there's certainly no requirement for an environmental impact study. Next slide. This we know, IDEM approval does not preempt local requirements, permits, or approval. Okay, so as long as you don't violate state law, okay, you can make it as restrictive as you want to, or as liberal as you want to. You just have to follow what they do. Next slide.
Within your zoning code. You can't go beyond your zoning code.
No, right, understand. Counties have the capacity to determine specific standards as long as not interfering with state laws or regulations. So this is the stuff I was talking about earlier. I just put it in the chart here. And, I think credit credit due. Somebody thought through this in Steuben County long before I was here. And they said, we should have some rules here. Okay, and so that's what you have, and those are, I think they're good rules. And when we appear before the BZA, they look at those when we go there. Next slide.
We had a question. Does anyone know when those rules are put in place?
Oh, wait.
08.
Well,
There you go.
there's been amendments, but 08 would be when the new ordinance update was done.
Okay,
So there's been prior action
Those were
now
08.
on this topic.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
When you got to look at it too, is a lot of the stuff you're saying in here, like in the comprehensive plan, it may not be in the ordinance, but as you just mentioned, when you go to the BZA,
Right.
people like Kevin bring it up. So those things are addressed in a different way as well. So it would constantly be updating itself, because we learned from the last ones, and then there has been updates to the ordinance. But 08 would be the fallback.
Yeah.
Do they set precedent based on that too then?
No.
Really?
No precedent is set of the BZA meeting. They can use it. We can update the ordinance if we find a problem, or they can just ask those
Each
questions.
decision by the Board of Zoning Appeals is separate and independent based upon the facts presented at that hearing.
Yeah.
How many times have you said that?
I've heard at least 100. So.
Well, okay, not to open a can of worms, but then do people that come before the BZA use what was determined last time and say, hey, you did this last time?
Yeah.
But then you can't.
We can only take whatever's presented right before us to make our determination.
Good, that's good. I didn't know.
These are some CFO requirements. You remember the CAFO is a subset of a CFO, just larger. I find it interesting that it's larger was a subset of the other one. 39 counties in the state of Indiana have buffer requirements from those type of areas. They range from a quarter mile to a mile. 5 counties require a pre-application, and based on permitting and all that kind of stuff, maybe that's something we want to consider. Okay, 12 to 18 months to have the public come in and talk about what they want to do, get all the approvals from the neighbors, get all their stuff together. 8 counties have odor control provisions that range from screening to setbacks to these type of things. 11 counties require route permits or plans. You're going to be by a road, and how's it going to work? And that did come up with the county guys on the one facility, the 8,000 head. It's like that road's not going to do it. Okay, but I don't know if there was really a plan submitted other than we're going to have thousands of trucks there. 17 counties have enhanced manure applications required to follow some of the Purdue extension rules, knifing in, all those things. Kevin, I'm way beyond where I should be on this. But 2 counties actually require biodigesters. So on site on a CFO. And 4 counties have mortality disposal requirements. The state says you got to do it within 24 hours. But once again, that's one of those things that you'd have to follow them up and tell them it's not being done. Next slide. So these are just some considerations we came up with. We think maybe especially for the lakes, we ought to consider some type of buffer as in distance. I think all of the current CFOs and CAFOs in the county, there's only 6. I think they would all fit that requirement right there between a quarter mile to a mile from a lake. But, all the waterways tend to run to the lake. So it's not, I don't know if it's just the lake or if you got to look at some of those other things. And, everybody here knows our water runs to Fort Wayne and then runs up to Lake Erie, Toledo, and all that kind of stuff.
Sitting on a hill.
Well, some of it goes to Lake Michigan and some of it goes to Lake Erie. It just.
The 5 counties have a violation clause. If you got one of these things and you've had a state violation within 5 years, you can't get a permit. Okay, so the county just says you can't, and the state says, okay, that's your call. Like I said, enhanced things, we talked about pre-application, route permits, and mortality disposal. 4 other counties have more rigid mortality disposal requirements. Next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, yes, sir.
You're using the term county a lot, and then you're saying you just mentioned the violation clause.
5 counties have a violation clause that says if you've had any kind of violation that's been noted within 5 years, we're not going to let you get a permit.
Now, with that specific question there, would that be for the individual, the property, how do they?
I don't know.
Violation from who? From IDEM or from
County.
the county or where?
I think this one, the way it read was from IDEM,
Yeah.
but we can give you the exact, most of this data came directly from the Purdue benchmark study where they went through all the counties and rated them. So this gives you, we could get the exact language that they used to share.
And some of those counties, if you've taken care of the violation within a certain period of time, will allow you to get back in the good graces again. So it's not one and done always. I didn't mean to put it on.
No, I'm just asking for clarification on that. And then when you say counties, when I look through these lists on the last couple of pages, I noticed that, highway does some of this, health department does this. So you're just putting under the broad category of county. Is it planning? Is it?
This is what the county has in their zoning for CFOs.
As far as the enforcement side, if that's where you're
Yeah.
going.
It's in a zoning ordinance, so it could even be a checkpoint agency.
Right, it's in the zoning ordinance, it refers to.
I can't see a lot of this falling under the plan. Like I said, one of us going out there in our muck boots looking for poop. It's not real. There's got to be other agencies involved within the county.
You may not be qualified, just like Brent and I aren't qualified to talk about the health impacts, and that's why Vicky spoke to that in all those studies. 'Cause that's outside of our credentials.
No, what I'm getting at is if we can find out, get rid of the word county, if we can find out the county agency, that would help us moving forward as far as who we're working with, who we want on the steering committee.
Yeah, we could
Find out, these other existing, or, we may be duplicating services or something like that, and it's extremely wasteful, or 2 departments aren't doing their job, and it's extremely, extremely wasteful.
Right.
So the last part here, just to wrap it up, again, we appreciate you guys. I mean, really, when we think about the future considerations, I think everything's on the table with with as urgent as I feel about it. Zoning requirements, we've talked about IDEM's definition of CFOs and CAFOs, but you have other animal feeding operations, which, the least of my concern are, like we talk about with, like Jim's example, somebody that has, cattle for his own use on his own property. That's not the problem we're talking about here. But we're all about even increased septic and those regulations and support for other lakes. I mean, when you think about common sense, we have, old cottages on very low, high water table areas that's contributing to the issue as well. Some of the no-brainer stuff, even around the lakes to, I think maybe Landon's point, filter strips along those waterways and those things, just so, all your over applied yards, that contributes, that's nutrients as well into that water. But looking at riparian zones and ditches, but, the big thing that when we think about the current regs and what's going on in some areas is we have 0 classification of highly integrated industrial level agriculture. And, that extends far beyond just that 16, square mile area that we got from one of our members. A lot of those, feeder calves are up in, across the line in Michigan that are owned by the same farm, and he's contracting multiples and building all those. And literally in some of those more primitive operations where they're not even using a skid steer, what I've witnessed is, it's the well with a waste pump and go in and, like a fire hose, blast it out down the drain and there it goes. Okay. That's what, we know has had a big impact on Little Long Lake. We have a very small watershed up there. Clear Lake has done a great job, but they have a separate, watershed, and they've put in their own buffers at the town and with their own conservancy. but that's the type of stuff that, we're talking about long-term. So we really appreciate, your time tonight.
And on the filter strip, since you mentioned that, one of your group, I talked to you, I know for a fact, there's supposed to be for DNR, every time you do a seawall or any kind of retaining wall out there, you're supposed to have a 10-foot filter strip. So there's already a law in place for that, which would address some of the fertilization.
Yep.
The first thing they do is mow it. Because, they don't want that ugly native grass out there. They want their Kentucky bluegrass short stuff so they can see their lake and whatnot. So some of these, again, with me in the state, these rules are in place. They're just not being enforced in the state.
I think there's a huge gap.
Can you come visit my house? Because I don't mow mine.
Okay.
I have a buffer strip and there are many others around there so please don't categorize. We're not supposed to categorize the agricultural area. Please don't categorize ours.
Yeah, that goes the same way with farm people. What I hear you saying is there's one or two bad apples that are making it bad for all the guys doing their job the same way. So, yeah.
Yeah, let's, this is a great discussion. We'll leave those types of discussions if they get pointed and settled in a smaller group, okay? But now, okay, so Jake, thanks, to your folks for putting this together and presenting. Is there any other comments from the board or questions from the board? Or the commission, I should say?
Great presentation.
Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. So no, we appreciate the work put into it.
Very much so.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys. We're talking like the group up at the Long Lake. We've been in constant contact with Hillsdale County, because it's a shared county deal. I personally have talked to the commissioners in Williams County because there's a lot, that goes right across the state line there. And, it rolls downhill. So, to this gentleman's point, there's a lot that we're sending that loops through Williams County, and there's a lot coming back this way. So some of that collaboration and just sharing information is going to be key for all of us long term.
Yeah, and I guess, I've got experience in government. So the law of unintended consequences, that we're going to run into, and, Jeff brought it up initially. It's like, what's your number? Where, compared to Jim's number. So, I think that's got to be, kind of a major component. We got to look at uncovering those laws of unintended consequences.
And numbers are going to be a big deal now. So if I'm not mistaken, just so everybody hears it here tonight, when this group comes up with a number and passes along to the commissioners, whenever that is, it's a thumbs up or thumbs down. They can't tweak those numbers, can they? If they want it to be tweaked, they'd have to send it back to this board. Okay.
Yeah.
Any change in the ordinance has to be sent back to the planning commission at least once.
But I know, I'm just saying for this whole, it looks like numbers are going to be a sticking point, and it might happen here with a recommendation, may be unanimous to the commissioners, and it may get kicked back to us. And yeah, anyway.
It's happened before.
Oh, yeah. A couple times.
Yeah, okay. So again, I think we've got great operating, kind of parameters to work from. So, okay. So I guess, everybody that signed in and that's interested, I guess, kind of our next step, and I'll throw this out there, and Rick can help you refine it, or, Ken, or, whichever. Just initially, I think, an email distribution list, and then, getting, some people put together to figure out when we can meet. And how to meet, I need to review what the rules are for a subcommittee and how to meet and how it's recorded, and, who has to be there, or who,
Well, that's up to the chair. I think you can decide most of that yourself. If you have more than a majority of the plan commission on that committee.
We could.
I
Then
think
you
the
have
bylaws
notice. You'd have to give
the
notice.
bylaws say because subcommittees are members of your own person.
Yeah, it's just like
From the board now,
just like the plan
the
committee.
public or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's just like the plaque. And again, then there's, you set a charter and a mission based on that, and then, take the feedback, how it's utilized, and then how it's distributed just for approval. Okay, yeah, we can come up with that. Okay.
I guess my question is, the subcommittees, what's the goal? Is the goal to provide a plan, or is it just to continue to educate? Because I think at some point there has to be a proposal made, and not just a continual, we don't like Cathros, we don't know that the water quality is bad because of what. We've got a lot of data that supports that maybe it's from this or that, but we don't have a whole lot of, some of your drafts, and don't take this the wrong way, were from, 2 or 3 years old. So I mean, I think at some point you have to have a definitive plan instead of just recurring complaints. Just my own 2 cents.
So don't regulate the
I think it
regulations.
should be both.
You have to
Yeah.
find
I think it should be both.
But, and again, I think, that, the initial meeting is gonna be just that, are we gonna come up with a plan or are we coming up with an ordinance, And then, kind of whittling it down from there. But yeah, I think that's perfect, the first meeting can set that mission and, how to accomplish, whatever. I think that's very effective. But then, yeah, you're right, then we can determine which data is utilized, where we need to put more data into it or get greater feedbacks. That's point counterpoint, right?
So, Landon, to your point, I think the subcommittee needs to come up with recommendations for you guys to develop the ordinance. Or it can be done through us, but, I don't know how to write an ordinance, so come up with recommendations for whoever does that to do that. Redefine some of the definitions in the book, because I agree with Rick, when I looked them up in my book, it's like, okay, I fit these, how does it apply to me in Steuben County?
Right, no, I completely agree. We can't just keep coming up with a problem. We have to have a plan. We have to have a solution.
Yes.
Otherwise,
I hear all agree that there's a problem. It's just a matter of how we go about addressing it in a formal and proper futuristic way. So,
This is awesome. I love this.
Go ahead.
And I think initially it needs to be a plan in the direction that we're going. And it may turn into an ordinance form, but I think just coming up with a plan and what direction we're moving, we're moving to protect our county. And that's what we need to keep in mind.
Very good. Okay. Any other comments? We don't have anything to vote on the table at this point, right? Okay, so any announcements before we adjourn? Did we have an announcement? Oh, no, yeah, we talked about doing a team building thing after this meeting, but I think we've gone along, so. And there's, it's just something we discussed that, getting out of this room and having a conversation about something other than plan commission stuff. So, we could table that until next time. Let's do that. And then we can plan a little bit better, and how to meet up with everybody.
I don't think I have any vote on anything other than the tabling and untabling. So we're just making sure.
Yep. No,
The amendment.
okay.
The amendment.
Yeah.
I got that down.
That's solved. Okay. Any other announcements from the board?
question, are you gonna provide the stormwater ordinance in a hard copy, or are we just gonna?
No, we were supposed to, we thought we had it tonight, but we.
Yeah, it's basically, I talked with Greg and he said that Brandon is working on basically the final revisions to send to us. So the last copy I sent you guys back, I think around July, is the most recent copy that we've had. So I couldn't send anything new because he's still working on it. As soon as he gets it, Greg says he's gonna send it over to me, and I figured I'd forward it over to everybody. And if somebody, I talked with IT and it seems they've got the issue with emails figured out. Karen seems to be receiving my emails now. So I think we should be good now on, and if somebody doesn't get the PDF or whatever document that I have for stormwater, let me know and I can make a physical copy and we could even mail it to you guys if you could make it in the office.
Well, and if we could, so yeah, we didn't have a report from them this month.
No, we did not.
If they could give us instructions on how we should go through it, I mean, page turn is what I call it, but.
Yeah, oh, I got you.
But, because we had asked for them to track any changes that they were making. And that would be a quick hit for, I think, most board members.
Yeah.
Yeah, any instructions that they have on how we should go through it. And then we do that independently and come back next month and hopefully go through it quickly. Expedition. Okay, anything else? Don, you had your hand raised. Did we answer that? Oh, yeah, you were stretching. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Entertain a motion to adjourn. We adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Adjourned.
It was Jeff and then Karen.
You spell your name with that.
All right, how do I give you, how do we tell you?
I said so.
You know,
After blue.
I would assume you're on the.
I don't know, very much.
Good idea.
So